High value areas attract players who compete for the resources there, and the higher number of players increases the level of risk. Military loot spawns in particular make people more paranoid and aggressive than usual. We can get complacent after walking through several small towns with no opposition, and then we end up doing the same thing at, say, a military base. It makes more sense to behave differently in a high-risk area than you would in a lower-risk area. Especially when people are new to the game, they tend to approach things almost in a straight line, then become frustrated and feel somehow cheated when it doesn't go how they expect. This video is going to break down a method of approaching these more high-risk places into just 3 steps, which are based around moving through 3 different types of position. It is the kind of stuff that if you've been playing for a while, you'll probably be doing most of it intuitively. Also, we're only looking at lone wolf play in this video. In a second follow-up video, we'll apply the same system to teams, which might be more interesting for the more advanced players. I've thought about how to break things down into the simplest elements that we can build on going forward, which is based on terrain. Of course, the loot spawn is the focal point. This is where players are drawn to, while others will gain a vantage point over that loot spawn to attack other players. What they're looking for at minimum is an angle on the loot spawn within the effective range of their weapons. Then there's the area outside this field of play, where you either don't have a view or aren't within a reasonable range to engage anyone around the loot spawn, but you might be able to spot players who have a vantage point on that loot spawn. Let's visualize it. So let's say hypothetically we've got 2 buildings which spawn the loot we're after, surrounded by 3 hills and some forest. There's another hill nearby which does not have a view over the buildings. For reference, I've labelled the 3 area types inside, vantage and outside. Inside is the area in proximity to the loot spawn, including the visible area that must be crossed to reach it. Vantage is anywhere which provides a vantage point of the inside area. Outside is anywhere it's difficult or impossible to engage someone on inside because you either don't have a good angle or you're outside effective range. Although getting that loot might be your ultimate goal, you need to make it your lowest priority. Forget about the loot until you reach it. Instead, focus on finding other players by clearing areas from the outside in, like layers of an onion, until you move from the safest to the most dangerous areas. If you see other players before they see you, you have control and you can make a decision. Withdraw, attack, observe, track, whatever. Have a look at my last video, Eyes Are More Important Than Guns and Dayz, for more on that side of things. Loot is the end goal, but you won't get the loot if you're dead. Let's go over the 3 steps of the process. From the outside, this is the most important part. This is where you have the most control and you're the safest. So you're the most likely to see them first, as players in vantage are focused on inside. They may have their back towards you while they're facing in towards those loot spawns. If you encounter any issue, it's also easier to escape and disappear into the map. So from outside, visually clear as much of the other areas as possible. You might see a player from a massive distance and it could take a very long time to move into a better position to engage them, but just be patient, line them up and don't expose yourself. Players in vantage are anticipating that they can ambush those who are drawn to the loot. You are anticipating their movements in turn and predicting their position while they're hunting. So you're really getting a vantage point over their vantage point. You'll learn over time which positions people often choose and which paths they take as they move into these positions. This allows you to prioritize where you will look and move to. Eventually, even if you're going into a new map for the first time, just based on experience, you'll be able to roughly predict where they're most likely to be. In our hypothetical map, you won't be able to see inside from this outside hill, but you'll be able to see anyone who is walking towards a vantage point. You can also get an angle on the vantage hill opposite and the forest below. This kind of position is pretty good. The fact that you can't see the inside should make you feel more comfortable. From this outside position in the forest, you might be able to peek through the trees to see just about everything, but you're far away and most of your vision is obscured. From here you can see mostly without being seen, you're relatively safe due to the range and you can escape if needed. The main thing you need to be aware of are the thoroughfares. Thoroughfares are simply paths that have a lot of traffic and they're really good for 2 things: ambushing other players and avoiding them so you don't get ambushed by other players. Thoroughfares are the most dangerous parts of the map while you're in these outside areas. Once you feel comfortable that you've done enough from the outside positions, move to a vantage point. You'll have to choose your vantage point carefully. Approach in a way that if someone is in the vantage point, you'll be coming at them from the rear or a flank. Avoid approaching a vantage point from the front. You need to compromise between getting a good view and not being in an obvious or exposed position. Scan other vantage points as a first priority and the inside area as a lower priority. Don't take too long, but don't rush it at the same time. Once you're in a vantage area, the way we were thinking about thoroughfares outside does not apply so much now. And this is because paths within vantage and inside are far more limited. Your options are limited, which means that taking a commonly used path at times is the safest way. If you attack someone or get attacked, even if you put them down with one shot and you don't see anyone else, reset. Always assume they've got a friend covering them. That means go back outside, start from scratch, clear everything, move into a different vantage point than the one where you had contact. Don't go back to the same one. Once you've done everything you can now try to move to the loot. But in contrast to being outside where you can take your time, you need to spend the shortest amount of time possible on the inside area. Looting is the only part you can afford to actually do badly. You won't die if you fail to pick up a gun attachment, but you might die if you stand still in the open for too long. Once you're done inside, take your best available path out to safety and disappear. Now, on choosing positions, cover and concealment are obvious things that you need to be aware of, but wherever you move to, try to have some kind of cover behind you at minimum. Don't stop anywhere with your back and sides exposed. Just having something in front of you is not enough. You actually need to worry more about where you're not looking. Do not move to a position unless it has a good path of retreat. If there is an obstacle between you and getting to safety, you do not have a good path of retreat. For example, if you need to climb down a ladder to escape, or if you need to run through an open field for 20 seconds to escape, you don't have a good path of retreat. Wherever you are, you want to be hidden within seconds when you're attacked. If you move to a safe position and you fail to get a good angle, you can always try somewhere else. If you get to a bad position and you get caught, then you're dead. Remember that whenever you're scanning, whatever you can see you too. Someone is always moving on you and lining up a shot. Even if they're not, you should think like that all the time, because it affects the way you think, it affects the way you move. Especially when you're playing alone, nothing is ever truly cleared because you can't look in all directions at the same time. If you scan a hill, someone can move to that hill the moment you look away. Someone can step out of a building, they can appear from behind a rock. If you're not looking at something, you don't know what is there. You're always dealing with incomplete information. Now on to movement. Use your judgment when you're moving between these different areas. Minimize and compromise between these three things: time, distance, and exposure. You obviously want to spend the least time, travel the shortest distance, and be the least visible when you're moving. However, you also have to use your judgment and make compromises between these three things. You might need to spend more time and travel a longer distance to be less exposed, for example, or increase your exposure to take the shortest path. This is all a lot to manage for a single player. No matter how careful you are, no matter what you do, you can always get caught out. But if you're playing in a team, this allows you to assign tasks to different players. So you can have people watching certain angles, getting eyes on and communicating, which increases your situational awareness. This is what we're going to cover in the next video.